All right, so it's October 16th, and this is our first recorded ALF topic jam, ALF answer thing. thing. And so my thought was we could go around and each share like who we are, where we're at, what we're kind of doing experience-wise, and then jump in and start talking about intention setting and reflection practices. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sweet. Somebody else want to start?
I'll start. I'm Emily Quant from Northern California. We're in the Sacramento area and we're free to learn. We opened in January and had a fantastic year. Going again this year strong and just regrouping, getting our foundation really solid and excited to we didn't originally open as a full Agile Learning Center, so we're actually rebranding right now to we're all in. So that's what we're in the process of right now. And we have 13 kids right now from 4.5 to 12. So that's us.
Maybe I should go next. I'm Spencer Babcock, and I'm also helping out at Free to Learn. Last year I worked at Village Free School in Portland, Oregon, and I traveled recently to Montana and visited Cottonwood ALC in Helena, Montana, and saw what they were up to. And now I'm here in the Sacramento area helping out Free to Learn. So I'm excited to be here and help them in whatever way I can. So that's me.
Hey guys, Dan Ports. I'm in Queens here in New York City. And right now my wife and I are looking at just, learning and getting to know the whole ALC practice and whatnot. There's my wife now. My wife, Grace. And so, we're looking to start an ALC in Queens sometime in the next few years. We have 3 kids, 3, 2, and 8 months. And so by the time the oldest is ready for kindergarten, we're looking at having something up and running. So that's where we are right now.
I could jump in. I'm Megan, and I'm from Windsor House School. We are not an ALC school at this time. However, I'm really interested in the model myself and have introduced the tools at our school. We're publicly funded. We're 182 kids, 5 through 19 years old, and we offer a high school graduation for those who want to do it. So treat it like university. We take the courses, you get to graduate. If you want to do other things, you can do other things. I'm actually today planning a trip out to North Carolina, Charlotte, and to New York City. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be there for 3 days in Charlotte and 4 days in New York. Delighted to meet everybody out that way. And when I came in the other times, I've offered that if there are parent groups or any kind of thing you want to set up where I'm just talking to people about being involved with democratic education, which I have been since 1971 when my mom started our school. There's a way that talking to prospective parents or parents who are involved in this kind of school, when you talk from years of experience, that you can answer a lot of questions with that real comfortable ease of a long-term project. So I always offer my services or my time, if there's any group that wants to get together and chat. And when I'm in New York, I'm going to be looking forward to going to some musicals or wandering around the city or doing whatever with anybody who's there who wants to get together and hang out.
Setting your intentions.
Yeah, totally. As of today. I just decided all this today. I have to buy the tickets after we get off here.
And to clarify, because my screen says I'm Thomas, but I'm not. So I'm Abby, and I'm at the New York City flagship school. I'm one of the co-directors, and we are at 30 kids right now. Lined up to be 33 in November, and that's pretty much capacity for our space. So now we're looking for spaces to grow into. And our youngest currently is like an older 6, and our oldest is 17. I don't know. I've seen our kind of intention setting and reflection practices go through a lot of different cycles as the school here has grown. Because when I showed up, it was 6 kids and they mostly were younger. So I've gotten to watch like a lot of different iterations, but I'd be curious to hear what you've each experienced like in your settings as far as what's worked and what hasn't and things that were surprising.
I will share what we have done. We started out just in January, so we haven't had a huge amount of experience, but we met in the park for first semester last year. So the kids were just coming. We set out a great big tarp and were playing the whole time. So we were super, super excited to like instate all these tools and do intentions and go through the cycles of success, and it was going to be awesome. So we got everybody Kanban boards at the beginning of January when we got our space, and did that for a little while, and it felt really like forced schooling. Because everybody was just having the opportunity to come and be together and play together, and we were like, everybody sit down and everybody set your intentions and what do you 5-year-old want to do today? And it was very quickly thrown out as a leaf on the tree that fell to the ground, and we were like, whoa, this feels really weird, like it's not natural. So we tossed it out, probably only after like 3 weeks. And in the very short amount of time that was, we opened January 10th, it's now only a couple of months into the second year. We've done a ton of reiterations already on like what feels good, what the kids want to do, what we want to facilitate, what there's just been a bunch of stuff. So right now, setting intentions, we do spawn, and everybody has their own journal, and we write intentions in our journals. And it looks like a drawing for some kids, a huge bullet pointed list for other kids. We're mostly on the younger side, so a lot of drawings. With our tinies who don't write yet, we have Beth facilitates the littles spawn, and they do a conversation that she writes down for them. So she's doing that. And I do the bigs, and some of them do it. We have one who's unschooling, or who's like deschooling right now. So he draws a piece of bread with one bite taken out, and his intention for every single day is to take one bite of sandwich. And pretty much every day he's right on target and does that. So we're super proud at the end of the day. Yeah, so there's been a lot of things that we've tried a lot of different things already. We started out with everybody having their own Kanbans, and that went to the wayside real quick. So yeah, that's where we're at now. And it's working great for now.
The kids, so at your afternoon meeting, your afternoon spawn, do they go back to what they wrote in the morning, or do they write new stuff?
They do. They go back and either just check off anything that they've done. And then also we'll pose a question in the afternoon, like how they felt during the day, or anything like, was there anything that surprised you, or little things like that. So on their reflections, they will or will not also do that. So yeah, and we let the kids, like if anybody has something interesting that they want to share during the afternoon, a lot of times everybody will adopt the same, like, oh, this was really silly today. And then everybody will get in a group and be like, oh, this silly thing happened for me and this silly thing happened for me. So it kind of spreads like a virus.
Emily, what age ranges are you talking about when you say little and big?
We have about half and half, like kindergarten, first and second graders, and then third graders, like second, third graders. So those are our first and our two groups. Well, third, fourth, and fifth. Actually, we have one sixth grader in there too. So yeah, first through third or first through second, K through second, and third through sixth.
Okay. That's helpful because I anticipate we're going to start with a lot of younger kids, at least based on my own kids when we actually get started. So it's helpful to know what you guys do in that age range.
Yeah, it's not, the first thing is it's not really compulsory. It's just kind of who is interested in it. And we try to make it as interesting as possible so that it's valuable to them. But for the littles, they pretty much just let their day organically unfold. So you catch a lot more on the reflection.
Do their journals live at school, or do they travel with them?
No, they're at school.
Cool. And do they do like a end of week reflection?
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the journals or is it somewhere else?
It is in the journals. We pre-printed, Beth, by we, I mean Beth, awesomeness, printed up intention pages with a little place for them to color and then some words if they want to do. So they have intention page and then they have a reflection page. And then for the end of the week, they have a journal page. And we just pose a random question, or we let the kids pose a question. In the reflections, because we're only open 2 days right now, in there's not a huge amount of stuff going on. So it's usually in their journal pages, they feel like they've covered everything in the reflection already from the day before. So in their journal, they'll throw in something from that day, or we pose like a grand question. Mm-hmm. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And sometimes it gets a response and sometimes it doesn't. So,
do you keep one?
I do. I'm so proud of it. I have a like journal-ish thing that I keep all of my notes, just a consecutive timeline for. And one of the pieces of feedback that I took away from the ALF training was to be better about setting my own intentions and keeping them, because I'm super good about setting intentions, just whether I hold the space for myself or not. So I've incorporated into my like business piece, I always set my days with my posties, just like everybody else, and I write the times of what I'm going to do, and so I fill up that. And yeah, I'm super proud. I set my own intentions and I keep them. I'm getting very good at it.
Sweet.
Yeah, it helps me hold the space for the kids too, because a lot of my intentions are related to what the kids have requested. So it helps me to be a better facilitator. it's working out great.
How can I ask Spencer, how have you experienced, because you're also at Free to Learn? Like,
Yeah. I'm just so new at Free to Learn, but I did have some experiences that I had last year at Village Free School. Now, Village Free School isn't technically an ALC, but some of the other staff that were there participated in a workshop before the school year last year after the Aero conference. And so we tried to implement some of the tools. And some of the things that I noticed was, so they have sort of what you could say 3 spawns, and they're sort of age divided up by age. And so in the morning meeting, we tried doing intention setting with Kanban boards, and the oldest kids that were ages like 12 and older, like they didn't want to do anything because it was something new that like the adults were bringing into the space, and the culture is very old. I mean, it's like 12 years old. And so it was kind of a challenge to like bring that new thing in. But the middle group, the kids that are like ages like 9 to 12, we had a bit more success with them. We had individual Kanban boards for each of the kids, and we would kind of like help them talk through their intentions for the day. And that worked for a little while, but then it kind of fell off. And towards the end of the year, we tried having, we just had like the facilitator who was kind of like leading the morning meeting to just go around the room and ask each kid like what is their intention for the day, and then we would just write it on like a sticky note and post it up on the wall so that we could see everyone's intentions, and we'd ask the staff too like what are their intentions. And so we had a big collection of intentions, and then by the end of that kind of morning meeting, we would go around and then take all those intentions and we'd put them on their specific kind of Kanban boards so everyone could see what their specific thing was. So, but I noticed that like when it's about like starting something new for a community that's not used to like being agile and changing often, that it's there's so much inertia from that culture already set that it's really hard to try new things. So that's what I love about ALC, is that the culture is constantly changing. So bring in a new idea and we'll try it for a week and see what happens. So I like that.
Did you see when you were out at Cottonwood? Because I think Sarah's got mostly littler kids too.
Yeah. You know, I didn't really notice them doing like any post-it notes or anything with the really little kids. I mean, they're like the kids that she's meeting with are like 4 and 5-year-olds. So they're really young, but she would ask them like what their plans were for the day. And if they had something specific, we would write it down and post it up for everyone to see on like, we had sort of like a set the day sort of group Kanban. And so like, you know, a kid was like, I wanted to do cup phones. So she wrote that down, and that was a thing that we did, and everyone saw that and participated. So yeah, so it's still working for the younger kids too.
Yeah, I've seen that format, or like heard of people using that kind of format with littles, where the emphasis is on the conversation, and then where it makes sense translating what they say in the writing. Yep. So it's cool. Have you experienced it like, I don't know, since, how long have you been at Free to Learn?
Just a couple weeks. And they're only open 2 days a week. And because of my like circumstances at the moment, I'm only able to be there 1 day a week. So,
okay.
So, but it's good though.
Changing, but.
Say it again.
I was going to ask if you feel the process changing. Like here I can feel the morning and afternoon spawns kind of change as the year goes on and the kids settle into it.
Yeah. But I imagine if we were there more days a week, I would definitely be able to see that more clearly. I was going to point out that like, just I guess what Emily was talking about doing her own intention setting, I see like there's a lot of benefit, I think, that the kids notice by watching the adults in the space set their intentions very like openly and talk about it openly. So I think that's valuable.
Megan, do you guys do at Windsor House? Have you played with any of this stuff?
Well, yes, because last year Bear and Art came and worked with us for the first 3 weeks. And Art and the staff in the primary, like the 5 to 7-year-old space, gave it a go. And I think the teachers in particular really didn't like it. I don't know about the kids, but the teachers sure didn't. So I sort of concur that I think that the Kanban board and the sitting in a group and trying to form intentions with the really young ones doesn't feel organic enough. So they do what they do. They do have sort of standing activities that kids have asked for. So they have a Minecraft class that happens pretty much every day, a couple times a day, and kids are really on it about when that's happening and if their name is signed up for that. But I don't spend a lot of time there to see that. This year in the high school, we've moved from a high school that kind of got structured around the classes that kids who are graduating asked for so that they could graduate. We voted last year to not do that anymore and instead to have a project-based high school. And that meant that we were moving the math teacher, and he's also the science teacher, to follow the kids to the site. We have 4 to 7 sites every day because we don't have a main building. And so if the bulk of the teens were at a site, then we'll have the math teacher there so he can sort of basically tutor and work with kids on their math, all self-paced, because that's the thing that's kind of hard to get done all year. And it also is not embedded in the projects. So a lot of the other things that students need to do to graduate, they actually get done in the theater projects at the farm. So we're offering like a biology 11 course at the farm because we're growing everything and it fits right in, right? And those groups, the teams where they're meeting right now, they are basically doing a set the day. So the staff person will call the meeting about half an hour into the day. To varying degrees of success, students say what it is they want. Some don't say anything. And they get hunted down later and ask what they want, and it's written down on a sticky note and then put onto the board and scheduled. And then other sites, teachers are still following what would have looked like a school council meeting, but they're now happening on the site. And so in the morning, just starting with a meeting and like, what's the business of the day today? And it is looking more and more like a set the day kind of meeting, although none of us are using the ALC language because some staff are not feeling it as a good fit. But I think that the ideas brought forward, I'm seeing starting to play out, especially through the high school. That's where I have more time. And in sort of 8 to 12-year-olds, a morning meeting of some sort is now happening, I think, everywhere. And some of it looks more like a Sudbury Valley School meeting, and some of it looks like what used to be a Windsor House Room Council meeting, and some of it looks like basically a set the day meeting. But I feel like we're evolving into that process. I'm kind of curious right now with the teens to introduce the idea of a personal Kanban. Because with all the projects, and so many of them wishing to get some kind of credit for their projects on their transcript, they're finding it hard to keep track of everything they're working on. So I'm thinking that maybe like a portable laminated folder with small sticky notes in it that they can actually say, what am I doing today of my possible stuff? Or maybe showing them Trello and seeing if anyone, it's like kind of what works for each kid. But something where they're tracking things and have group projects, in the repertoire of what it is they're tracking for themselves that day. So I like it. I like what's happening so far, and I'm really excited to come and see schools that are more comfortable with the ALC tools and see what they're able to do with them.
Megan, can I ask, the very first thing you said was that you had some resistance from your teachers about, I'm not sure if it was a particular tool or just the general concept of intention setting. Could you elaborate on that a little more?
Well, I think that the teachers who are working with the youngest kids just feel like getting the kids to sit down in a meeting and set intentions together as a group just developmentally didn't fit. And when I actually went to the ALC in Charlotte last year, so Mosaic, the little kids group site and the older kids site were separate, just like ours are separate. And with the younger kids, they didn't do a morning meeting that I could see. At about 10:30, they sat down and had snack and read a story and talked about the options for the day. And that really resonated with me. And Lacey last week said that now they're actually, I think, writing down some of the ideas that kids come up with and putting them on a sticky note. And I think it's worth introducing some of the tools in an organic way with the youngest kids if you're moving towards doing this when they're older. And the other thing that we found really interesting is I brought it up with a speech and language pathologist that we have for the school. And so she works with kids for whom there's some difficulties going on around language, which often are connected to other difficulties. And she talked about the concept of executive function, which is basically what makes you think about what you're thinking about. And it's how we as human beings decide what to do in the moment to get us a result later on. So it allows you to look backwards and see what worked for you before, project into the future. But that whole idea of being able to think, what do I need to do now to get what I want in the future? And developmentally, 5 to 7-year-olds are like 20 minutes is about how far they can think in the future and hold what they need to do now to get what the thing in the future, which explains why our kids come all day long and say, is it time for Minecraft class? Because they have no felt sense of time going by and they can't read a clock yet. So she really encouraged us to stick with analog clocks because you can see the hands and see the sweep of time. And she loved the idea of sticky notes and the staff actually taking what the kids say they want to do, putting it into time slots with analog clock pictures beside them, and basically scaffolding a visual representation for how time flows, not expecting the kids to particularly engage with it, but just starting to model that because her research shows that executive function is something that can be taught and learned. And I don't like coercing kids into things, but I love the idea of coercing adults into creating scaffolding that helps kids to make their worlds go better. So that's sort of where I'm at with it. I think for me personally, sticky notes are what I live with in my pockets, on objects of mine, on boards, on walls. Like it's just how I organize myself. I'm really visual and other kids aren't. But I think it's worth having a visual representation for planning, especially around things that affect other people. So I want to do this and you want to do it too. How do I let you know that I want to do it so that you can join in with what I'm doing? So, I mean, I think that's why the ALC model just totally struck me personally when I saw it.
That's a great idea to put the picture of the clock. We do that transition of what the clock is going to look like. For in our situation, you have to reserve the theater to do a skating party. So we'll get all together when we set our intentions, and one person wants to reserve the theater and a bunch of people all want it too, right? But then the same thing, when are we doing skating? When are we doing skating? When are we doing skating? So we have, we go to the clock and say, okay, when the one is right here, the shorthand's gonna be on the one, and we talk about that, having that visual there on their sticky would be a great additional piece. The other thing that we have found to be really helpful is setting timers. Beth and I always have timers going, because once you're within like, I don't know, a 2-hour window of when the thing is going to happen, a couple of our kids are awesome about, if you just set a timer, they'll just come back and check it. And then they watch that countdown happening. And it's getting them, they're really little where they don't know what 28 minutes is, but they're getting really good at it quite quickly because they're so anxious to know when their next thing is happening.
Can I just throw in something else that I just think is like one of those interesting, and I don't know how all this lines up, but I have a family that's got their child in an Eton Aerosmith school, which is a particular educational, it's a private school, but it's more than just in Vancouver, it's in different cities. Anyway, they work with very severely learning disabled and often brain damaged children as well. Anyway, she's 11 or 12, and they have her there for reading, because she was having a really hard time with learning to read. And so they decided to go this route. And the intervention that this kid is doing 2 days a week at $5,000 for the summer was clocks, hands-on clocks, starting with 1, going to 2. Now she's doing 6 different hands, being given these times and having to map it out on the clock. And for whatever reason, doing this is making her brain now read. I don't know. I'm going to go visit the school now and check it out. But I am just curious. I'm getting really curious about human brains and our ability to visualize things and how that connects to other things in our brains.
That's cool. So when we're telling them to go look at the clock, because Minecraft starts in a half an hour, we're actually teaching them to read.
Who knows? Maybe. I don't know, but I'm interested.
That's cool.
Megan, do you do, or maybe this is more relevant at the high school, do your cohorts do any like end of day, end of week reflection?
They don't. And I actually think that would be really useful. It's not been in our culture at all. In fact, people kind of leave when they're done with whatever it is they're doing that day. So we don't hold people till the end of the day. Some people don't want to leave at the end of the day too, right? Like it just all depends. But because we do cleanup at the end of the day, we notice a general exodus just prior to cleanup, which is avoiding cleanup. So I don't know. It's hard to change a culture in a school that's been going for a really long time. So I think that it would have to be seen as a very useful thing. And I think it could be because they want more and more things like resources, people, timing, place. And so if at the end of the day, we're actually kind of the setup for what is happening next, the next day or in the schedule, I think it would get more valuable.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So Tony hopped on.
Hi, Tony.
Tony, we all kind of introduced ourselves already. And we're talking about how intention setting and reflection happens in the settings we're at. So if it's cool with Dan and it's cool with you, I'd want to like throw the mic to you because Dan's experience with spawns has mostly been with my kids. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Dan.
No, sure, go ahead.
So here at Heartwood in Atlanta, we actually don't call them spawns. This year we call them checkpoints. And we just kind of changed that up over the last week. We initiated something different. We've done intention getting so many different ways. I couldn't possibly I could go through the whole thing, but it would take way too long. Right now we have folders with papers in them. And on it is a section for intentions, a section for done, and a section for micro reflections, which we call microflections. And in the morning, they are to write down at least 3 intentions for the day. Then in the afternoon, they would check off those intentions that they did and then add anything in the done column that they also did that maybe they didn't intend to do. And then there is a page, a list of different reflection prompts or questions in their folder, and they are to use one of those questions as a prompt for their micro reflection that day, and they answer that question. It could be, did you see somebody do something kind today? Did you see somebody do something unkind? What's your favorite moment? Did you learn something or learn something about somebody? Different things. So yeah, that's how we do intention getting and stuff now. And what was the other part? I guess reflections too. Then weekly, we also have them, or that's the daily reflections. Weekly, we also have them like compile all their reflections and all the things that they've done to a like single format. And we use Seesaw right now. And so the kids, well, the older students, they will just go in, log in themselves and write up their stuff. There's like a segment of like older kids who can read and write, but we have them dictate to us just because they need like more practice with like the reflective capacities and like understanding what that really means. So they're exercising that muscle by dictating to me and Julia, and we might just ask more questions to help them like dig a little deeper for a more robust kind of reflection. Because it's interesting what they'll forget like just in a day. So definitely by the end of the week, it is just all gone if you're not like basically telling them, didn't you do this or didn't this happen? So yeah, and then we have younger kids who cannot read and write, and they do sort of scrapbook, collages types of things in a composition book. So they actually use sticky notes for their intentions, and then they just move them over to their composition book and might draw like some pictures related to their like reflective questions or whatever the prompts are.
You mentioned, Tony, that you've tried a couple different formats for your like intention setting and reflection stuff. Do you have one, like, you have to give all the examples. Do you have one example that was like interesting?
Actually, the one we're on now is the most interesting. Granted, I think that every time I come up with a new one, because I think before this, my whole thing was I was on this like whole campaign about saving paper because we were just burning through like just regular paper, printer paper, line paper, sticky notes. And I was just thinking, this is horrible. This is such a waste. And it's like something that gets me. So I changed their folders. At one point, they were just papers in sheet protectors, page protectors. So they were basically, you could use a dry erase marker on them. And so there was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They could write on that. And then at the end of the week, after they did their weekly reflections, they could just erase it. But what was happening was it wasn't really fitting for them to do daily reflections on it, the micro reflections. And then it was not fitting. Also, just like for some of them, maybe it was the type of markers or the quality of the sheet protectors this year. It would just erase just from closing it, putting it in a box. And after a few days, the words aren't even there anymore. So we went from that. Before that, we used Post-it notes instead of the dry erasing. So they write on Post-it notes, check it off, or move it to done on their folder. Before that, they just used like a bunch of papers, just wrote on the paper and then put a line under that day. And I think before that, we were using actually like a dry erase board. So everybody had their portion of a dry erase board, and we were putting their intentions. This is when we would actually write everything for the kids. Don't know why we ever did that. It's horrible. But we would write, the ones who can read and write do right now. And then the ones who can't, either they get a buddy in Checkpoint who writes for them, who helps them write, or they're encouraged to just like draw pictures related to what they're trying to do or wanting to do. But I think very early on, we would take just the dry erase board, and every student had like their section, and it was divided into two, intention and then done. And we would either check it off in the sticky note or like move it to the done column. But this was back when we were moving, we were in temporary space, and we had to pack up at the end of every day. So it just didn't work to have it on a dry erase board where stuff would be erased or sticky notes would fall off each day as the board's being moved. So yeah, that was actually the full history, pretty brief.
Well, and hey, because you had kids who were in a Sudbury school before, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, when we started off, that was pretty much, we were all Sudbury kids.
So a couple other people mentioned some resistance from kids who were used to a different way of doing things, to setting aside time for intention setting and reflection, and you know writing out their intentions and posting them places. Did you experience that at all with your kids?
No, and that's primarily because as we were switching over and changing and becoming this school, it was made very clearly to the kids by their parents that this is a different school, it's going to work a little bit differently. And then we also had an orientation at the beginning of that year explaining more in detail, this is what the school is about, this is how we do this stuff, pardon me, and this is why we do it, and this is what we believe in. So yeah, we just had an orientation. We went over our student agreements, and just for a good while last year, we reiterated if you're going to the school, this is what it means to go to this school. If you sign up for this school, then you're signing up for these particular events and tasks. So there is no coming here but not doing this thing. This is A equals B type of situation. So yeah, we explained that to them, and they were pretty on board with it. A lot of them, there's a good portion of our kids that were at Sudbury. They pretty much only knew kind of a Sudbury experience. That's where they spent most of their years. And so I think they were all kind of getting tired of the free form, not really doing anything. And there was just this sort of very sludgy culture that had already set there, of just being on screens all day and maybe playing outside, but not doing any actual organized activities. So part of them, even though they couldn't help themselves, they acknowledged that. They did also yearn for more structure, more activity. So that was beneficial for us. But ultimately, we were intentional about trying to phase out a lot of Sudbury habits from them, which was hard, but the whole getting used to morning meetings and whatnot wasn't really one of the difficulties. They were, they participate, even though they complain about them, they get it, they know, what the meeting is for and why.
And I didn't ask Emily or Megan, but Tony, do your kids run your meetings, your checkpoints?
Not yet. I just had this conversation with, we had a parent-student conference after school today with a particular kid, and I just mentioned this to them because I've just mentioned it to the kids last week about the behavior at checkpoint has been very kind of crazy. Some people are playing and distracting other people, and so I've been trying to check that, and I reiterated to them that, hey, I have this whole kit set up in a format for us to grow into for checkpoint, and ideally there's a guide for anybody to eventually, you all can lead and facilitate how checkpoints go. And or if I can't be there, some other person, some other adult could easily see what the options are and do that. So I was trying to create this order, but then all the goofing off they did, I said, you guys, we're never going to get to that point if I can't see and feel you are participating and into it and not being a distraction or trying to run away from the meeting. This is an essential part of going to the school. So this is not an optional type of thing or something you can wiggle out of. So you might as well participate. So yeah, it's going to take a little moment for everybody to okay, it's checkpoint. I know that I got to do this. So let me just go do my folder. Let's do this connection activity. And that's that, rather than trying to dance around it or prevent it or, anything. So there's that. Julie and I also just had a conversation today about the idea of oh, we don't have them facilitate check the day or change it. And also they can't do that, at least not right now. And I don't know if that's because we have not just pushed them and challenged them to do it, just tossing them out the nest, or are we just I also feel we're kind of waiting to see that they are ready for that and can be responsible enough. And yeah, I mean, so it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Do we let them try it out and then the behavior will come, or do we wait for certain behaviors to come up before we let them try it out? So yeah, it's pretty tricky. Right now, it's hard to get them to, be still or listen or like not distract each other at certain meetings. So, yep.
Tony, do you guys use the game shifting board during your meetings?
We do not use game shifting actually. We try to at the beginning of the year, and it just was not a fit for us for some reason. So yeah, it just was really trying to do it and use like all the tools in some way, but it was like so much of a chore for us to try to do that. It just, like I said, it didn't fit. So we just allowed ourselves to stop doing it.
Yeah. We tried it as well when we started and tossed it out real quick. But then that was something that at our training this summer, Art was like, use the game shifting board, use the game shifting board, use the game shifting board. And so we have reinstated it this year. And we've found it to be pretty great on our second try, letting the kids facilitate it. So it's gotten a little bit more participation, I guess, because we'll let one of the kids be the game master. And so because they're still really unfamiliar with it, we go over all of the elements of the game shifting board every meeting, basically, just quickly. And then we have a couple of police kids too who are like, we're not following the board. We're not following the board. So that helps as well. But it's been interesting to see. It has been nice for just honoring the board instead of honoring me saying, hey, we're not listening to so-and-so. Now we're just like, oh, did you want to change the board? So we don't have to police as much ourselves, I guess. It's been an interesting journey with the game shifting board.
Emily, do your kids, so they game master, do they facilitate any of the meetings?
No. The oldest is 12. And there's a couple who want to and have, let's see, we have a 10-year-old who wants to, two 10-year-olds who are like, yeah, we want to do it. And we've let them, and I guess they do with assistance a little bit. We'll kind of guide things a little with them. Yeah. But mostly it's the facilitators facilitating. But we do let them be the game masters so that they can, just to take that off of our bossing piece.
Dan, do you want to share either some of what you experienced at the New York school over the summer or something you've experienced from other spaces or what you're dreaming up for your space?
Well, let's see. I don't think I've gotten that far ahead yet in terms of dreams for our space. I have been experimenting with a lot of these concepts in various contexts outside of ALC. My day job is actually, I'm an administrator at a church in Queens. And so I've used the game shifting board there a little bit. And the teams enjoyed that. My wife and I will talk about, in the evenings, after we finally getting all the kids to bed, we'll talk about, all right, what are our intentions for the evening? Oh yeah, we have a CMB on the refrigerator as well in our kitchen. So it's more like an FMB, like a family board. So yeah, so those are a couple of things that we've been experimenting with in terms of just using these underlying practices outside of the strict like ALC setting.
Well, so it's funny because at the New York school, the morning and afternoon meetings looked a lot more like the Agile software kind of stand-up stuff. When I walked in, it was like 6 kids and a handful of adults, and they would stand in the lobby frequently around this like large multicolored hula hoop. And there was a wall that had everyone's Kanbans on it. So we would go and everyone would write up on Post-its what they wanted from their days. I don't remember, I guess the oldest kid was 9, 10, maybe. And then we would stand around this hula hoop, and there was wiggling, and sometimes they would take my camera and film each other. But it was cool and like refreshing after other settings I'd been in to see somebody like, you know, scribble on a sticky note and wait their turn and then be like, today I want to stop motion Lego with Ryan or eat lunch with Kai, whatever it would be. And so like, you know, that had the normal challenges, but like standing and being close to each other helped in a lot of ways with some of the like wiggliness of our humans. You know, and then there was a point where there were just too many of us and it was taking too long. So Thomas suggested we break up into spawn points and have smaller meetings. And that's been really good for us. Like at this point, we have 4 spawns. This year, they each have adults in them because we've got a bunch of new kids and we just have a lot of kids and a lot of new kids. But there have been points where there were spawns entirely run by kids, which was cool. And at this point, even though there's an adult in each spawn, we rarely are the ones running the meetings. The spawn that I'm in doesn't have a game shifting board. We just have a facilitator stack, and I'm not on it. And so the kids take turns facilitating the meetings and I like note take. But they come in and do their intention setting. Some of them use Kanban still. Most of them at this point have either lists that they write in dry erase marker or they like write out lists on sticky notes in pencil. And then they come back at the end of the day and update whatever format kind of thing they're using. And that's going pretty smoothly. I think it's going smoothly enough that in some of the other spawn points, they have started asking kind of questions after they finish the like businessy portion where they'll just like talk about things they saw during their days, which is cool. It's not really the vibe in my spawn, but that's because the kids, they're making it what they want and what serves them. So that's going smoothly. And then our other like big reflection practice is our community blogging time at the end of the week, which I suspect it may just be us and Mosaic still kind of doing something like that. But we clean up an hour early on Friday and then everyone goes and blogs. And some of them ask older kids to type for them. Some of them come get an adult and we take dictation. Some of them make videos and upload them. This year, I've got 2 kids who, at the beginning of the year, the website was broken on our first blogging day. So we had them write letters to their end of the year selves, and then they gave them to me to give back to them in June. And 2 of the kids found that so exhilarating that each week at blogging time, they've just been like, okay, I'm going to write another letter. And so I've just been like acquiring letters from these kids, which made me feel a little weird because I really like the idea of their reflections and sharing of their weeks being accessible to kids at other ALCs. But I've kind of released that mostly because there aren't a whole lot of other kids using the blogs that way right now. And so it might just be like a tool that's time, like it's not the time for that. They don't need it yet.
Can I ask a question? What are you blogging in? Like what platform?
So the ALC Network website is a WordPress Buddy Press site.
Okay.
So then each school has a website, and each kid, when they register an account, they get like a website and a blog.
Cool. Yeah, we're using WordPress too. Also, or not also, also maybe not a thing that has yet, its time has not come yet, but I predict it will.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch kind of, you know, you'll get a kid who's at first like not sure about the whole blogging thing, and they'll write like, my week was good. And then like they're trying to be done as quickly as possible so they can go play cards or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like this 8-year-old discovers he can change the colors. Or I've got like a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old who the same day discovered they could Google pictures, save them, and then make blog posts of all these pictures. And suddenly they were putting like, several blog posts out a day and blogging on not blogging days because they were just like, look at all the pictures of things that I like. So the kids, you know, it's funny because in the early days, we typically would have a kid or two who would kind of like groan about doing blogging time. But at this point, most of the kids, you know, even if they don't, like no one grumbles. They're like neutral to enthusiastic about it and are coming up with kind of creative ways to set themselves up to group blog or collaboratively blog or whatever.
Oh, wow. That's inspiring, actually.
It's been fun to watch. I wasn't too sure how they would take to it because WordPress didn't seem the most accessible kind of tool for some of our younger kids. But
one thing we found about WordPress blogs is that with the free ones anyway, you get unique email address. So if you have a smartphone, you can take a photo and email it to your own blog address and write a caption and anything, reflection, anything.
Cool. I didn't know that. I'll have to play with it.
Yeah.
Tony, do you
When I was at, Cottonwood ALC, I saw them using Seesaw and sort of using it as like a little blogging method. I'd be curious to know how they're using it there, Tony.
Yeah, so we use Seesaw right now, and I would love I love how it is on the Buddy Press, the WordPress site. I would love if the kids like saw Seesaw as a more like interactive social networky kind of thing because they can comment and read each other's stuff. But it just doesn't seem to happen that way. Like it's very, I don't know. I don't think they don't really like own it yet. It's more like this is something that Julie and Anthony require us to do, and so we do it, and that's it. I don't know that they don't at the moment seem super invested in it, and I'm not sure. I've never actually thought like how to do that until as I'm talking right now. I'm like, oh, how do I get them to be a little bit more excited and interactive on Seesaw? Like to read each other's posts and stuff, but I don't know. Right now, they're just like doing what we say because that's, just what they have to do. But I would love to get like a meta reflection actually from them of like, what do you think of reflection? Like, how's that working for you? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? How do we change it? Do you understand the purpose of it? Why we do it? So yeah, I got to put that on my to-do list.
I heard, I guess my understanding is parents can see what's on their Seesaw or whatever.
Parents can see it, but we used to share the link out last year just to remind parents, and so technically they could still see it, but they probably just forgot about it, don't access the link. So
I just remember hearing a parent like come in and being all excited about like something they saw their kid do in the middle of the day because they were watching what they did on their Seesaw or whatever. So I heard that seemed kind of cool.
What are the differences between Seesaw and the Agile blogs?
So Seesaw is very, like, it's more modeled for like teachers in the traditional classroom to give out work for students to submit that stuff and parents to see it kind of thing. The formatting of it is like, you can't really change anything about it. It's going to look the way look.
Tony.
So like just from the little that I've seen, it's like sort of like you can see just different people who are on the seesaw or something, and they can post videos or pictures and write up stuff about it, and then other people can kind of see it. And you can do all the kind of the same thing on like a blog, but it's a little bit different. Just looks different. But yeah, he's right in that it's like more designed for like teachers to give out assignments and then kids to kind of like post their responses or their, I don't know, submitting their assignment. I think the kids at Cottonwood were using, like, they would just grab a iPad and like take a video of like they were playing a game or something.
Hey, Tony, you're back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. My Zoom just gave up the ghost for a second. Yeah, I don't know if somebody filled it in. It's WordPress is just super customizable. It's fun to make it look like your own and kind of do whatever with it.
I mean, have you been getting, or I guess anyone who's in a school, like, do you get questions from the kids about why we set intentions and have like reflection time, group reflection time?
I haven't. I know we've explained it certainly before, and probably and definitely on multiple occasions. It's just like I wonder if that needs to be like a consistent reminder, like an awareness. I wonder if they forget about it or if like it's in there somewhere if you were to like really probe them. But for the most part, they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just do it. It's not horrible, so we go along with it. But yeah, I've not had any of them actually just ask like from scratch, like why are we doing this? Why do we have to do this? Like they just know that we have to and they're fine with it. But honestly, I could be surprised because sometimes parents come back and tell me something that the kids have said or explained about school. And I'm like, oh, wow, they actually listen. So I could be surprised that if they explain this stuff to like their grandparents or some other friend, they might like totally get it. And they just are, playing chicken at school.
Do your kids ask, Emily?
I don't think anybody has asked directly. I think we are pretty clear, or we end up going over it a lot, because anytime anything feels like a drag, we're like, oh, okay, let's get this done really quickly. Like if we honor the process, then we don't have to do it anymore. Like, and so we end up talking about why, like, is there a reason? Does anyone want to do this? Is it valuable to know what we're doing and keep track? And so I think we end up accidentally going over the fact that the reason that we're setting intentions and reflecting is to help us not miss out on stuff. So we set intentions if in the event that we have to do like a group game or something. It just helps everybody to know and not miss anything. And then the reflections, we do come up with a few things in reflections that are shared that are like, oh, I tried to do this and it didn't happen because of A, B, or C. And so we're problem solving those things together. And as we problem solve those things together, it comes out like, oh, isn't it great that we shared this, because we wouldn't have had these great ideas unless we knew about this as a community and during this time. So Yeah, it kind of just naturally evolves that we're talking about it on a I feel like it's a fairly frequent basis.
Can I ask if you guys do reflection cycles any longer than a day or a week, like a month or a year?
Julie and I just talked about that again. I proposed last year and then reminded today of doing like we have the daily things now, and we've always had the weekly things. And then at the end of last year, we like printed out all their stuff to compile it in one source. And I wanted to like have the students like take the time to really review it and come through it, but I mean, it was way too much and they weren't totally interested in it. So wanting to do them like quarterly to review all their reflections, just to get a feel for like what they've done, how they've spent their time. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is the end of first quarter of the school year. So it's probably time to do them, but our schedule is way too hectic and crazy right now. So I might just wait a few more months to do a review of all the reflection journals. But well, until November, December. But yeah, that's the plan for now.
We used to print out the kids' Trellos. So like each day we would log their reflections from the end of the day into their Trellos. And so we played with whether it was like monthly or quarterly, but we used to periodically like print them out. And the kids would just leave them around the school. Like they didn't really care. And then at the end of the school year, I would print out stacks of photos for each kid. And some of them really liked that, but you know, again, for the most part, I would like find photos laying around the school. So we've released a lot of that, and our kind of end of year reflection is more like our final change up. We use a format that we like borrowed and adapted from one Nancy Tilton uses at Mosaic. That's much more about going through the community mastery board and looking at our culture and what we've done well and what we'd like to improve on in the following year. But setting aside time to do that kind of opens space then for people to talk about, oh, do you remember this point in the year? And do you remember that point? And we were doing these things. And it's not so much a reflection on like projects or activities yet, but you know, they don't seem, the kids haven't wanted it yet. You know, we're just getting to the place where our kids who've been here 4 years are kind of like wanting to see their stuff from the first year or two and look back at their younger selves that way. So like that's starting to interest them, and I wouldn't be surprised if like as we continue on, we hit a point where a bunch of our kids have those like multi-year records and are curious. Yeah, right now we don't do anything formal though.
We didn't do anything formal, but for some reason we had a bunch of birthdays that were happening in October. And so switching over from September to October was a really big thing for the kids because their birthdays were coming up. And so we ended up just with an incidental like, oh, what was your favorite thing about the first month of school? And what's your favorite thing that you're looking forward to about the next month? And that's because everyone's having birthdays. But it ended up being a little monthly reflection that it was fun. I don't know if I would do it intentionally or not, but it worked out fun. I don't know if I'd put it on my to-do list, but organically it was awesome.
I had this experience last year at the end of the year at Village Free School where we did this as staff over as kind of like a reflection of the whole year. And we sort of like drew a house with like an attic, a main floor, and a basement. And on the attic, we kind of like had everyone write on stickies, like what is an ideal student? And then we all posted up our stickies in the attic. And then we went to the basement and we wrote down what are all the things holding the kids back, and the fears we have on why they're not becoming the ideal student we see them to be. and each phase we kind of talked about it and reflected together about it. And then on the main floor, we kind of talked about, well, what are they doing well? What are they doing already that's helping them already achieve being that ideal student? But after doing that, it was like just like really, really rich experience. But it also made me realize that that could also be done in so many other ways, like on an individual level, kind of reflecting as individuals about the year and stuff like that.
We kind of do. It's funny because it's like, oh, right, Spencer's talking about things you do with adults. And we've done some awesome group reflections at the end of our trainings. Those are really fun and manage to blend kind of the cultural norms and kind of abstract, intangible elements with like specific, like we did this thing and it was awesome. But that hasn't trickled in at school yet. And I don't know whether it's because it's like more appealing to adults or if it's just not time yet. We'll see. It's a cool idea though.
Another thing that I noticed on the NYC, some of either in the enrollment form or interested form or something, was a question like, what do you want to focus on this year or something in light of that? That might be a cool thing to reflect on if the student has talked to their parent when they were filling out the enrollment paperwork for the year. And so they set those intentions without us, but it might be cool to look through and just do a checkup like at the semester or something and be like, hey, this is what you had talked to your parents about wanting to do before you were here. And how do you feel like that's going? I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, we don't actually ask that of all the kids at the start of each year, but I could see where that would be really powerful. I mean, we definitely do when it's part of our like process for kids who are trying to graduate. Mm-hmm. But we could definitely reintroduce it like between enrollment and graduation.
Yeah, it might be fun. I was just looking through and did like a test of that form, whatever form it was on. And I did it with Jordan, and he randomly my son, who's 9, he'll be 10 next month. And he randomly popped up and was like, oh, I want to get to be a better reader this year. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? You never spend any time reading. Like, this is clearly not important to you. He's like, no, seriously, I want to do that. So it has been helpful in facilitating him as well, that I know that. And he said, well, I always forget about wanting to do that. And so then I never practice reading. And so it's been a great tool as a facilitator to be able to, he actually did need a little bit of assistance on that. And so it's been good.
Yeah. I mean, anything that lets them, post visual reminders to themselves or like loop the rest of the community in on what they're trying to do so we know how to better support them. Like, it's always good. I just want to be time sensitive. So we're at like 8:55. You guys have any other questions? Things you're curious about?
I have another question, kind of following up on one of the questions that you guys were just talking about. Basically, when do kids start to really tune into the value of reflection? And you guys are talking a little bit about kids grasping the value of reflection. And so I'm wondering how age dependent that is.
Oh, I mean, I've seen it have, like, there's some extent to which it has to do with age, because their relationship to time changes. But beyond the basic, otherwise it doesn't seem very age dependent. I have 9-year-olds who are very invested in like, I want to like, I have a goal to make each of my days a good day, and I know I have the power to do that. So I'm going to like reflect on what is and isn't working for me and like use it to change my decisions. Which like legit is something a parent shared that came up in one of her conversations with her kid, which was cool. And then I've got some teens who are a little bit more blasé about it. And whether that's performative or not, like, it's whatever serves them, it's fine. There does end up being more urgency at different points. So when kids suddenly decide they want to try to get into a summer scholarship program or they want an internship or something, I notice some more urgency and like thoughtfulness in what they're writing of their reflections. But yeah, otherwise it's much more about like the person and the context, or so it seems from here.
I would agree that it seems the same here. Like the problem solving, reflection is basically for solving problems. So if they're not currently feeling like they missed out on anything or have anything that they're really struggling with, it doesn't play as much of a role. But then for some just personalities, they love the glory of listing everything out and checking everything off, and that feels really great to their soul every single day. So it's very personality driven, and just the time that they're in. If they have something that they want to accomplish right then they'll be all gung-ho, and if not, then it's fine.
Something that I'm reminded of at the end of the year, the older kids, there was like 8 of them or something, raised money and went to the beach for a trip. And at a campfire on the beach, we were hanging out and we did a gratitude circle. So like we ran around the circle and we started with one person and everyone talked about one thing they're grateful for about that one person, and then shifted so that everyone spoke about everyone else in the circle. And it just felt like a really great feeling of connection with everyone. And it also made me realize that even though they really joke with each other, they really do notice the positive things about each other. And it was a good kind of way to kind of like look at the year and kind of a whole of like the challenges that happened and then the positive things that happened and how they supported each other and cool things they actually witnessed but don't always talk about.
Hey, dears. Are you cool if I stop the recording and we do a quick gratitudes checkout? You can twinkles under twinkles. All right, cool. I'm gonna stop this experiment. Yay.